Hello, and welcome to another edition of Odds and Ends. I'm Montgomery County Auditor Keith. I'm glad to welcome you to our program again this month. Odds and Ends is a monthly program that's produced by the Montgomery County Auditor's Office. We share information about things going on in the community, and we meet fascinating people who are making positive contributions to our committee and to our community, and learn more about them and learn what they're doing in the community and what roles they play and what kind of positive impact they're having in the community. And so, that being said, we are so excited to have with us today State Representative Desiree Tims, who is our newest state representative, and she is here with us today, and we're going to learn more about Desiree and what's going on in the state legislature. Desiree, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk a little bit more about all the things happening in the Statehouse and how more of the listeners can help me make good trouble.
There you go. Make good trouble. Make good trouble. So I said you're our newest state legislator. So you represent most of Dayton,
and all of Trotwood.
Most of Dayton and all of Trotwood. That's your district?
That's my district.
Okay. You're my state representative.
Yes.
You're my state representative. So I'm glad to have you here. And say that district's new. Of course, there's been all kinds of redrawing of districts over the years, and that's just part of what you have to put up with, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, but we're glad to have you, and it's exciting, I think, for you to be a new state legislator. So let's talk about how you got there, first of all. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so my story, the short version, I'm born and raised in Dayton, proud graduate of Dayton Public Schools, K through 12. Went to college, and when I got to college, the economy started to change. That was, I was getting ready to graduate right around the 2008 recession. And I remember seeing people from, I went to school in Cincinnati at Xavier. I remember coming back home on the weekends because I came home probably too much, according to my mom. But I saw, cars being repossessed, homes being worked, people losing their jobs in real time. My dad was one of the folks affected by the changes in the economy here. And I thought, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Because I just took out a ton of student loans to graduate from Xavier. Yeah. And I'm seeing people who graduate ahead of me working at the mall. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, no, I worked at the mall when I was a student at Dunbar. Yeah. That is not the goal after being a college graduate. No. And right around that time, a man named Barack Obama was a senator and was launching his campaign for president. And that's how I really got started. I was upset about the economy. I was upset about my chances at education. I struggled in college because of, I think, a lack of a foundational education in the public school system. Not because of my teachers, but because of the lack of resources compared to my friends who went to private school. And I thought, well, that's not fair. Mm-hmm. So between that, gas prices at the time were really high. So I empathize with the young people today. I was like, I can't get back up and down 75.
Yeah.
And that it really started from a place of personal experience as to why I wanted to get involved in changing my community.
Well, that was a tough time. In 2008, I've been the county auditor since 2000, and in 2008 when when the housing boom collapsed and we saw property values go way down, and like you said, we saw people going into foreclosure. We were leading the nation in foreclosures in this community at one time, and people losing the equity in their homes. It was a very tough, heartbreaking time for people. So I can sympathize with you. I know what you're talking about. So, but you got involved with President Obama's campaign?
Yes. So that story also originates in West Dayton.
Okay.
My grandmother would bring me out to campaign events or parades or anything all the time, not because I was interested, but because I did not have a choice but to go.
So you weren't interested?
I was not interested.
Politics wasn't on your radar?
No, not at all.
What was your major at Xavier?
I started off as nursing.
Okay.
I switched to communications.
All right.
But if you ask me, I was either going to be in communications or biomedical engineer. So
okay.
I was very much, med
Well, this is very interesting.
So this is completely
very
different.
Interesting. Okay. All right. How you got here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hear more about it then.
So there was a house party in West Dayton. A bunch of black women were having this party and for Barack Obama to make phone calls and talk about his campaign. And my grandmother said, "You need to leave campus and drive to Dayton to take me to this party off Salem Avenue." And I was like, man, I have plans this week. I'm trying to hang out with my friends. But okay, I did not have a choice. So I came home. We went to this house party. And I remember seeing the excitement and energy in this house amongst these women about this man named Barack Obama, who I had never heard of. I knew Hillary Clinton at the time. This was still during the primary, but I did not hear about Barack Obama. And it was infectious. And so he then came to campus for a campaign rally, and I was like, wow, okay, now I'm really inspired.
Sure.
And so I'll knock doors and I'll volunteer. That was it. I was like, I don't know anything else about it. You said you were going to bring down the gas prices, and you're going to help us get jobs, and you understand student loan debt? Yeah, I'll knock some doors for you.
Sure.
And that's how it began. When I graduated, I worked for Wells Fargo Financial, which, surprise, surprise, during the housing crisis,
we
refinanced a lot of homes. Wells Fargo Bank nationally decided to close all of their branches in the Midwest except for Chicago. And so, like many people in Dayton, many people around the country, I was a victim of the recession and was laid off. And so I found myself, okay, I just, got a new Toyota Camry, new apartment. I thought I had a new big girl job, and now I am laid off and I need to find a job ASAP.
Okay.
And during that time, I applied for so many jobs.
And the road just kept leading you back to Barack Obama?
Nothing. No. So my grandmother said, I was watching MSNBC, and Barack Obama says he has jobs. And I was like, did he?
Well, let's find out, huh?
Do you know any famous politicians? I don't. Do you know any elected officials? I don't. I'm not going to get that job. So I was like, whatever. And then my dad sent an email from my cousin and was like, look, a White House internship. And I was like, can we pray for Procter & Gamble or GE? Because, this is where I'm trying to go. So I applied for the internship, didn't think anything of it. Wells Fargo gives me a call. Hey, you really impressed some of the regional VPs during your short time with us. Would you be willing to stay on with the company if you relocated? And I said, relocate to where? And they said, to Virginia. And I thought, I like Virginia Beach.
Oh, okay.
My aunt lives there. My uncle's in the military. So Norfolk, I spent a lot of time there. I was like, yeah, I'll move to Virginia because I don't know why I assumed it was Virginia Beach.
Virginia's a big state.
It's a big state. Turns out it was the D.C. suburbs.
Okay.
And so I moved to Northern Virginia. I'm working at the bank. It's nothing like the job I had in Ohio. I'm miserable, but I need a job to pay my bills. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And 3 weeks in, the White House called. Okay. And said, you applied for an internship. I said, no, I didn't. They said, yes, you did. This is the White House, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was my friends from Xavier, pulling my leg or playing a prank on me. So I hung up.
Okay.
And they called back.
Okay.
And that's
was this a grandma going at work for you?
I guess so.
Was grandma working for you?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Okay. But you don't remember applying for this?
I don't, because I was so I just need to apply so that you can.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can get back over here to the private sector goal at the time. And it turns out Grandma was right.
Grandma was right. Well, how fascinating to get to be an intern in the Barack Obama White House at a critical time in our nation's history. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
And but so it put you on a whole new career path.
It did.
Got you away from the bank, and put you in a career path of public service. What did you do in the White House?
So when I got there, again, I didn't know anything about politics or anyone. I knew Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, who I did not get to see every day and work for, and I was totally fine with that. I was like, I'm here to complete the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it is that you'll have me do, I would do it. And at the time, I was like, if I only stay here for a month or two, I can always say, like, I worked for the first black president of the United States. And
Exactly.
I really didn't care anything else about it.
Right.
So I was not as enamored by all of the people walking the halls as some of my fellow interns. And they were like, that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so. I was like,
You didn't know any of them anyway, right?
Yeah, so I was like, oh, okay. I just heard him say pop. So I was like, oh, you're from the Midwest? I'm from Ohio. And so I struck up a lot of conversations with a lot of the people from Chicago because everyone else was saying soda or a different, vocab in the White House. But I read mail. I helped pull letters for the president's briefing book from real Americans and their stories, particularly around healthcare, because this was during the time where we were talking about, passing
the Affordable
Yes.
Care Act. Mm-hmm.
So I was able to work on those issues. I also worked in the Office of Public Engagement, doing African American outreach, and then also for women and girls. And so through that, I learned a lot about constituent services and outreach, and also the different domestic policy issues that we were facing as a nation.
Skills that I'm sure serve you well now.
Yes.
But before you got into the Ohio House, you did run for U.S. Congress, right? You ran for the House of Representatives in 2020?
2020.
5 years ago. So how'd you get involved in that?
So I worked on Capitol Hill. When I was at the White House, I really enjoyed it, but I really wanted to work on Ohio-specific issues. And so I dropped my resume off at Sherrod Brown's office.
Okay.
Probably every Friday for about 3 months.
You'd go and see him again and see them drop them?
For the younger people watching and listening, then you would drop off a physical copy of your resume to the hiring manager so they would have it in their hands beyond an email.
Beyond an email.
And eventually, I landed an interview, and I was able to work for the senator. And there, I was able to dive into more issues that were directly specific to Ohio, which was my passion because that's how my story began, Ohio. I worked on Capitol Hill. I decided to later go to law school. I went to law school at night, which was a grind. And then afterwards, I just thought, you did earn your law degree. I did earn my law degree, yes. Years and years and years. I graduated from Georgetown in 2019, so fairly new grad. And I was coming home to work at a law firm. And I remember I summered at Dinsmore and Shoal in Cincinnati. Okay. And I thought, maybe I'll take a break from public service and go back to the private sector life. Because, again, this is like the Wells Fargo story again. So I'm working at the firm. It's great. And then someone from Emily's List reached out and said, you should think about running for Congress. And I was like, I don't really know. I think maybe it's time. I was making $30,000 a year in D.C. on Capitol Hill, eating beans and rice and peanut butter and jelly.
That doesn't go far on Capitol Hill. No.
Right? I had a great time, learned a lot, but I was, tired of being poor. And so I was like, no, I don't really think it's a good time. And then push came to shove. I really thought about why I sacrificed the years of my life working in public service, what it means for me. And the reality is it doesn't feel like work. It feels like a privilege and an honor. And I frankly think that I can do the job better than some people can. And at the time, I was like, this guy has a terrible voting record on issues I care about, and I'm going to challenge him.
Well, and again, I've been at this a long time, and you and I have talked over the years. There's sometimes, even in races that you're unsuccessful, you're still a success because that's the way our system works, is giving people a choice and being able to debate the issues and talk about the issues and the give and take of that. That's what it's all about, so win or lose. But you did eventually win. So let's talk about your race. So what year was this? This was 24. 24, you ran for the State House of Representatives. And there's some things you did in between there. But let's talk about your time here in the State House now. So you've only been a few months. First impressions?
First impressions is similar to Capitol Hill.
Okay.
I think it's just a different term of vocabulary and vernacular and different personalities. But I think that the State House, the people in power have a lot more power than the people who vote for them realize. People pay attention to Congress. They're watching CNN or Fox News or MSNBC. They're not watching the Ohio Channel.
Sure.
And so people are able to get away with a lot more. And so I think the, first impression is like, oh, we have to educate people about what's at stake.
And what's going on. Yeah, the big difference, I think, would be, in Washington, in Congress, it's pretty tight. I mean, it's polarized, but the differences in the two sides is really tight. Where in the Ohio Statehouse, it's pretty lopsided, and so that makes a big difference. I'm sure you have to face that every day.
Oh, yeah. The Democrats have no power. I want to repeat that. The Democrats have no power. There are only 34 of us out of the 99 seats. And so we can vote no on everything and still lose. And so I think, and I love the idea and the opportunity to compromise, because I think, when I was a Capitol Hill staffer, John Boehner was the speaker and things were just different than the way things are now. And so I believe in working across the aisle to get the job done. I'm sure my ideas are lovely, but I'm sure they are not perfect. And the same goes for my counterparts. And so the more we collaborate, the stronger the policy is for the public. However, when you do not have to compromise and you do not have to collaborate, things are not always so great. And I think that's what's happening here in Ohio. We have a gerrymandered statehouse, gerrymandered maps, which result in very extreme elected officials because they only have to win in their primaries.
Right. So then what is your role? What do you see as your role then?
My role is to, one, agitate.
Good trouble.
I try to, make good trouble, but also reason with a lot of my colleagues. And what I found is there are a lot of them that are reasonable. And if you explain why this policy or this law is problematic, I have found, I choose to see the glass half full, that more oftentimes than not, if it's not super political, they will meet you halfway.
Okay. So there is some room for movement there and compromise, you think?
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know, because one of the issues that my office has been dealing with quite a bit is property tax relief, and of course the county auditors in Ohio are in the front lines dealing with property taxes anyway. And as we have seen the economy go as it has, and the housing market explode like it has, property values go up, property values up, it's really caused us to focus our attention on the impact that's having in terms of property taxes, and how it's burdening people, especially those on fixed incomes, middle incomes. So there's a lot of talk going on in the legislature about property tax relief, yes?
Yes. And unfortunately, I think that there isn't enough being done. And what I try to tell people is, look, when I explain different issues to my colleagues, they're looking at me as a colleague or another politician. When your grandmother comes up to the Statehouse and she explains why it's a problem for her,
it makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. And so really trying to get the word out that, hey, you need to come up to Columbus and show your face and let them know, hey, you're hurting me. This policy is not good for my family. I have to feed my children, and I don't make enough money to pay for the new property tax value that, has been assessed on my property. So what are you going to do for me?
All right. My colleagues and I have come up with some recommendations that we would like to see implemented. There's no one quick fix in this, right? And so it's difficult, as you can well imagine. It's difficult for in a position like I'm in. I'm in a large urban county. So the state of Ohio is so diverse. So you've got these urban counties, you got the rural counties, suburban, farming communities, and so trying to get auditors to come to some agreement on things is not always easy. But we have come to agreement on 4 recommendations that we are pushing in the legislature, and hopefully you've heard those or heard from us on those. But what we've been doing, we've been equally disappointed in the legislature in their failure to act on these things. So what we've been doing is going around the state to different communities, holding briefings on our recommendations to try to do just what you're saying, is to get the public involved. You need to talk to your legislators. You need to talk to your representatives, your senators, because they've heard from us. They need to hear from you. So we've been to Athens and Youngstown, Toledo, Cincinnati, and we've got other places go. And hopefully we're getting that word out. But it's a big issue in Columbus, I think.
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and I think the field tables, the round tables, the door-to-door is going to be a lot more persuasive and effective than any, email.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. So I want to talk to you about these leading ladies of the legislature. Can we talk about that?
Yes.
The leading ladies of the legislature. I saw this today, and when we're recording this this evening, I think you have one of these. You're doing a tour yourself. You and several members of the legislature, a listening tour. Is kind of what we're talking about. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so we got together as the Ohio Democratic women legislators to decide how can we get more boots on the ground. And so we are having regional roundtables / listening sessions across the state. And so some of us from Southwest Ohio, I'm the only Democrat in Montgomery County, so I'm being pulled to Cincinnati.
You're probably the only Democrat in like a 5-county region.
Right?
Really,
There's like another one in Hamilton. That's
in
the
Hamilton,
nearest one.
yeah.
And so we are meeting in Sharonville and have invited the public to come out because we want to hear your stories. I use stories from constituents when I am trying to make the case to a colleague about a certain bill or a policy. And I am also trying to hear what concerns people have. The ideas and the bills that I introduce should not all be from my brain or my lived experience or my family's lived experience. It should be from the people. And so oftentimes people say, this one thing would change my life so much if only we could get that law changed. I'm like, well, tell me more about it so that I can introduce it. Yeah. I'd love to hear stories because that's what we are elected to do. We are elected to solve problems and to create good public policy.
So this was the first one in Sharonville. That's your first one.
This is the first one for
Southwest.
West,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to the other areas of the state too?
I have. There's one in Northeast Ohio that was a few weeks ago. And
I was in Youngstown not too long ago, so I know what you mean.
Yeah, the drive was like, if only we had trains.
Yeah, I agree. But it's eye-opening, I think, to go to these other areas of the state and hear people's concerns. So when we were in Youngstown, we were there with the Northeast County auditors and talked with them and heard from them. And then same thing then when we were in Toledo. So I've enjoyed it. It's hard, but this work is hard, but it's important work. And trying to educate, as you said, trying to educate people. It's a big job.
Yeah.
It's a big job.
And there will be more field tours. I know the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus is also getting ready to launch some tours around the state as well. So we'll be visiting communities that are not represented by Democrats and also not represented by black lawmakers, but they may have a significant black demographic or community that makes up that district to let them know, hey, even if you are represented by a Republican, your ideas still matter. Yeah.
So you're a young woman that's been got into a career of public service when you really didn't plan on a career in public service. So what advice would you give for young people if they were interested in a career in public service, or whether they should or not? Maybe you'd advise them not to do this. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it depends on timing. When I ran for Congress, I learned a lot. I don't know if I had all the information up front, I would have gone into it.
Sometimes people encourage people to get involved in these things without giving them the whole story.
Yeah, you have to be a little naive, but that's the only way you get through it. But the way you stay in it is with your why. And so if you want to work in public office, if you want to be an elected official, if you want to be a public servant of any kind, I think you have to know your why. And if your why gets you up in the morning, then you should absolutely go for it.
Well, what's your why?
My why is my community. I think we deserve so much more. And I want to be a voice for the voiceless. And so that's why I do it. I hope to pass the baton to someone else who can continue to keep it going. But that's my why. And the day that I wake up and I feel like, I'm out.
But you don't feel that way.
No, not yet.
You don't feel that way.
No.
It's tough and it's challenging, but you feel like you're serving your why.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Desiree, thank you so much. I've enjoyed the spending a few minutes with you, learning more about you and your career and your thoughts on public service. So thank you so much. It's important work that you do and an important voice in our community, and we're glad to have you and fortunate to have you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all you do in the community. You have certainly served as a mentor to so many of us, and so I personally appreciate you, but also I know the community appreciates all that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up here for this month's episode of Odds and Ends. We'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you very much.